Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
So we all have difficult people in our lives, but what if we're one of them? Don't laugh at me or look at me, Nancy.
I am.
Sarah Elliston is back on Big Blend Radio today to give us tips on how to recognize if we are a difficult person, and if so, how to not be one. Sarah is the author of the book, Lessons from a Difficult Person, How to Deal with People Like Us, and of course it's on Amazon, all those great places. She is a faculty member of the William Glasser Institute and is a workshop leader and trainer who is certified in values realization, parent effectiveness training, and reality therapy. Sarah's book, Lessons from a Difficult Person, is available on Amazon, as I was saying, but always go to the author's website, and her website is sarah-elliston.author. She's also one of our regular Big Blend Radio experts, and you can see her articles in Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. And if you go to blendradioandtv.com, you'll see her in our expert department, and then just click on Sarah for her articles and interviews. So, Sarah, you are clickable. How are you?
I'm clickable.
Yes.
I'm great. Thanks for inviting me back.
It's always good having you on the show. We always have such great conversations, and I think this is going to be another good one because we're talking about difficult people. And I could give you a list of difficult people, but reading your article, which her article is up on blendradioandtv.com and also in the July-August issue of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. So go read it. I was going to see, that's a difficult person thing to say. Go do this. I started recognizing myself. I'm like, Sarah.
It made you uncomfortable, huh?
Are we all a little bit difficult? Isn't every individual some way got a difficult person?
Well, I defined difficult people as people who annoy others. So it depends on who you are. You might find someone difficult and somebody else might not even notice.
Okay, so that's interesting. So it could go by people's, and that could also be like some people remind people of other people. You know, there's some people you instantly don't like them, and it really is because they look just like somebody that you really don't like.
Or they have the same tone of voice or the same approach, and so we end up calling someone difficult and maybe nobody else does. But generally, I think what you're also asking is that if we're assertive and independent and we have our own opinions, are we difficult? Yeah. And that, of course, is a matter, again, of gradation and the way the words are used and when the opinions are expressed.
So it's like when I said about your article, I said to go read it. That's just me being enthusiastic, but it would have been better to say, we'd love for you to read it. We invite you to go and read it instead of go read it.
Go read it, I think, is fine. But yeah, we invite you to read it is a little bit more polite maybe, or a little bit more welcoming. But I don't think when you say to someone, you really should read this, I don't think that's being difficult. Personally, that isn't me I would not call that being difficult.
Okay.
I think if somebody said, oh, well, I know a lot about difficult people, and then you said, no, but you really should read this. And then they say, well, I've done a lot. I've read this book and this book. And you say, yeah, but you haven't read ours, and she's really good, and you probably would miss a lot if you argue with the other person in your passion, if you want to call it that, you start to kind of itch at someone, and they would call you difficult.
I think, because sometimes it could be enthusiasm not meaning anything. And I think that's the thing. It's like, okay, you can't force someone to do, well, there's a lot of people forcing people to do a lot of things that they shouldn't, but in general terms of decent human beings, you can't really force someone to do something they don't want to do. It's not going to happen.
Well, hopefully that's true.
I'm talking about decent people.
Yeah.
Decent people.
But I think it's the tone of voice and the insistence. Like what Sarah is saying, if you keep repeating it and pushing and just pushing the issue, then that is difficult for the other person.
Because you're not really listening. So you say you really should read Sarah's article, and I say, I've done a lot of work on this. I think identifying myself and whether I'm difficult or not is something I've worked a lot on. You might say, oh, really? What have you done? Mm-hmm. So if you're listening to them, then you can say, you might find some of that in Sarah's article. Mm. But if you're not listening, you just say, yeah, but you really should read this. I like to think that people who were trying to invite me to change when I was really difficult those people who were trying to be polite, they would call me passionate. So I remember someone said, boy, you sure have a lot of passion about that. And I think in retrospect, what they meant was I wasn't really listening to anybody else. I was just talking about what I cared about.
See, that I think that happens. People go into a zone of that where and I think it's like as much as we need to listen to others, we should listen to what we're saying and what we're doing. And you talk about that in your article.
In the article,
Pay attention. Pay attention.
I think all the way through the article, I keep saying pay attention, because it's not just pay attention to what you're doing, it's pay attention to how people are responding to you. Mm. And where is that? There's some place where, well, the consequences of your behavior is this. I kind of like this part. Shall I read this part?
Sure.
If you hear yourself continually telling others why something won't work, they won't invite you to try something new, and there goes your promotion. Ooh, if you spend lunch gossiping about another person, you probably won't be invited to have lunch again, and there goes a potential ally. If your reaction to change is always negative, people won't share their plans with you until it's all figured out, and you lose the opportunity to be involved in a new process. That's sort of work-related, but it could also be family-related. If you hear yourself being offended, this is one of the things that I think is pretty typical of people who are difficult, is they're always offended. It's like, wow, how could they do that? You're offended by the day or the work plan, or you get mad at the airlines and it becomes an offense. It's not like they made a mistake and they've acknowledged it and the person remains offended. You're offended by your vacation or the in-laws or your children. What I'm suggesting is that negative, I'm sorry?
I said politicians.
Well,
I'm sorry.
That's a whole nother bag. Yeah.
I just thought that in.
But the consistent negativity is really unpleasant for everybody else. We all feel bad when we say it, and we feel bad when we hear it, and we spoil the day, and we cause friction. And so my point is, if you hear yourself insisting that your way is the right way and others should stop arguing and they should just do it, this is where we started, where you were saying you should start paying attention to yourself, because this is really the first step in being a bully. And you may have been taught that to tell people this is the way to do it is a form of leadership, but good colleagues really find that if you try to lead that way, your good colleagues will go find other teams to be on.
That's
and
true.
You end up with estranged family members, people that haven't spoken for years because someone is so intransigent or offended or negative, and the argument got too personal. Well, who knows? I just the numbers of people that I talk to who say, yes, well, I haven't been able to talk to my mother-in-law or my uncle or my sister or whoever for years because they don't listen to me. And it's just too painful. And it hurts me.
It's sad. And I think people do, and it can get to that point. I mean, and sometimes you need to, if it's toxic to your life, and I think that's the same in the business, department. It's, and sometimes you're not being heard, and maybe you are someone who's saying the right thing and doing the right thing, and the person that you're trying to talk with is difficult. So there's this, eventually then you move on. And if you're the leader and you're being difficult, you're going to lose those really
all the people.
Yeah. And the greatest thing a leader knows is to hire people with the ideas that are smarter than them in a way. It's like, hey, get this person. They're really rock stars. And they can really help, and then you should be supportive, listen, because that's why you hired them. I think you're really, really right about that. And I think Debbie Downer from Saturday Night Live should watch her own episodes so she stops being a downer, because it's true. There's those people that you don't, they're going to call and you're like, oh no, not again, because all we're going to do is sit there for an hour while they whine. You don't want the whine, the big whine,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of a difficult person is they have to, can't they sort some things out? I mean, I'm not saying don't be friends, don't be colleagues, but there's a line of when the negativity, there's people who are so negative and they will call 10 people and do the same negative thing and no one can help them. They want advice, but then they don't listen to it. They don't want to hear it. They just want to whine.
Right. I think a
and
whiner.
I'm whining right now.
Yeah. Well, no, you're not. But you're saying, isn't a whiner wouldn't you call somebody who's whining a difficult person? And I would say yes, that somebody who is complaining all the time. One of the other articles that I wrote talked about the caring habits and the toxic habits. Mm-hmm. But difficult people pretty much present toxic habits. They whine, they criticize, they complain, they blame, they threaten, they punish, they bribe. They live in, or they believe in, an external control world, which means that the outside forces are making us do things. And so if I complain enough, just the right complaint will make something change. And really, we change because of something inside of us, not because of something outside. Something outside might happen that we're afraid of, and so we might go ahead and do what we don't want to do because we want to stay alive, or we don't want to lose money on our taxes or something like that. But it's because we care about ourselves or our children or our lives, not because of the external person.
I see.
So that's a whole nother book, I guess, is the people who are doing this negative behaviors believe that if they just do it one more time, it'll tip the balance, because they believe it's controlled outside of them, where really it's their insides that's controlling them.
So that could also go into gambling and addiction. That repetition is kind of just one more time attitude. Do you know what I mean? That can go into.
See, and I think complaining is as addictive as gambling. The consequences aren't usually as severe. You don't lose all your money if you complain unless you get fired from your job.
I think, there could be something to the idea that the person is not taking responsibility for anything.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Something or someone is always doing something to them. So it's everybody's fault but theirs.
It's almost like they're a piece of jelly rolling down, or something sticky, like a piece of cake that gets rolled down the street and it keeps picking up more cake stuff. That's my word, stuff. Watching my language here, speaking with good purpose, the 8 Keys of Excellence, here we are. And it keeps, getting all this stuff on it. And that's how they live their lives. There's this continual, it's almost, that's like a weird control thing of it. I don't know how to explain that, but they want to control that stuff and they want more stuff so that no one sees their internal stuff.
But it's not really
because they think that something's wrong with them on the inside. And I think this is taught. I mean, I think it's what they've witnessed. If they have adults in their lives when they're children who say, well, I'm going to choose to do this, even though it may not be what we all want to do, but these are my reasons behind it. And, let me know whether it's good or bad for you, or when the adults take responsibility. When you see one parent turn to the other parent and say, you're right, I was wrong, I'm sorry, and they don't just keep fighting. I don't know how many of us get to witness that, to see the significant people in our lives accept the fact that, oops, what I did was unprofessional or inexcusable, or I realize now that it hurt you and I'm sorry. That teaches their children or whoever's watching that we can be vulnerable and we don't get killed.
I think people, like the generations before us pretty much took everything into the bedroom, and discussions like "I'm sorry" or "I'm not sorry" were usually behind closed doors, even though you could hear people yelling sometimes.
Down the street, you could hear it.
Yeah, and so I mean, I don't remember. When I think back, apologies.
There's some people who believe never do an apology.
That's obvious.
Just saying.
But
sorry. I just did an apology for everybody.
No, but I mean, stuff trickles from the top, doesn't it? So, I just don't think people do apologies in front of other people most of the time.
Well, I was just giving that as an example of I think people who roll down the street gathering stuff, thinking that the external world is what makes them the way they are. It's because I believe it's because they've been taught that, not because I mean they have to have been either taught or had it reinforced when they, that must have been what they witnessed.
Do you think it might just be to get attention, though? Sometimes.
Well, it works, so they keep doing it.
Wow, and they look like a hero at times too. They do this like they create the drama and then put the drama out with their thing, get everybody on, and then look at me. I know people like that who create a drama to put it out.
Okay,
and talking they politics again?
No.
I thought we weren't going to talk politics.
I just had to do it.
I just,
Okay, I guess I can't find an example of it in my head, but it sounds like if they've created drama and then they come in and resolve the trauma, they think that people's appreciation for them gives them value instead of believing that they had value whether they created the drama or not.
Exactly. And that could, and there's a side of what you were taught and what you're not taught, but that can also come from something, negative that could have, abusive in a childhood. It could be, it boils down to self-esteem issues, right, too? So you're talking about someone that, and that's where the thing is to realize, okay, everybody has their own story, and to be patient and as the other individuals, be as kind as you can, but you don't have to stick around it. Like I was saying, if something's really toxic to you, any kind of relationship, you don't have to stay in it. You can walk away and not be in the drama of fighting it, or you can.
Well, here's an example of someone. I had a trainer that I worked with for a couple of years, and I really liked him. He did yell at me because that was his way of being passionate. He wasn't telling me I was stupid, but he would say, I would say, I don't think I can do that. It's too scary. And he'd say, oh, come on. And he'd give me all the logical reasons of why I could do it. And I remember finally turning to him at one point and saying, you're talking to my brain and I'm terrified in my heart. You're talking logic and I'm scared. Talk to me about, hold on to me or something so I'm not scared. And he did, and it worked. But my point is I worked with him for a while and I liked him a lot. My friends would say, why do you go? I mean, he yells at you. I said, well, he's yelling at me out of his passion. He's not yelling at me because he doesn't like me. He wants me to change. That's his way of trying to get me to change. Well, the upshot of it was eventually he suggested that I work with a different trainer. And he did it in a kind of an abrupt way, and it kind of hurt my feelings. And I emailed his boss and said, I don't know what this is all about. And the boss wrote back and said, he led me to believe that you had discussed this, so I'm sorry it was a surprise. He said he's so upset because he can't get you to lose weight. He says he's probably not the right trainer. I mean, it means he's not a good trainer, that he hasn't been able to get you to, go on a good food plan and lose weight. And my reaction to that was, oh, the poor guy, he really believes that how my body looks and is shaped he's responsible for that.
Wow.
So when I immediately my reaction was, oh, no problem. But gee, I wish he'd said that so I could have pointed out to him that it wasn't true. Yeah. But I immediately lost all my, whatever it was I was feeling, which was hurt and a little annoyed and disappointed, and all of it went out the window because I thought, oh, the poor guy, he still thinks he's in charge of other people.
Wow.
And he's
there's a
my
lot of
age.
people, yeah, that's, and I think it just is, yeah, that you're, and that's once you realize you're not in control of everybody and you're not responsible for them, then your life becomes so much easier because you can't carry the weight of the world, you know.
I don't want to be responsible for everybody.
I know.
No thanks.
Oh.
You know, but I know, but I think it's a really interesting, I mean, it's a topic, but it's a real life thing that of working with people that may have those difficult tendencies or being the difficult person and then realizing it. And once you start to realize it, you know, it's true about saying sorry, or as soon as, you know, for me personally, knowing that it, you know, like the 8 Keys of Excellence, which you've been on those shows with the 8 Keys of Excellence program, and a lot of them came through in your article in this discussion, you know, having integrity to self. I think that's part of it, is understanding who you are. And then, you know, that speak with good purpose is a good one. Speak honestly and kindly. And flexibility, being flexible, that important part of it. And difficult people have that, this is my way or the highway. And then taking ownership of your actions, I think is so important. And I think that once you start to recognize qualities that you need to fix, you know, with yourself, you look in the mirror, some people, you know, freak out. Oh my gosh, you know, then they think I'm an imperfect person. Isn't that kind of that reaction thing? And then you start to fix things. And sometimes it's really, you don't want to look at the things that may be negative with yourself. But once you do and you start to fix things, you start to realize this is pretty cool, you know, and things become easier. It's like making an honest apology. All of a sudden, the mistake, you learn from something, or whatever you did wrong, you learn from something and you can move forward. I mean, it all depends on the major circumstance. I mean, if you did something really bad, you may have to sit with that. But if it's something, you know, you lost someone's homework, you know,
the dog ate it,
you know, and then you apologize and you realize you could just take responsibility instead of lying or trying to hide something, and you take a responsibility and ownership. I think you start to move forward in life, and it feels good, and you're not sitting with it. And I think that's such an important part of it, is to start to acknowledge. But isn't that kind of a hard process in the beginning?
Oh, yes. I don't think any of this is easy, but what I suggest in terms of the article, I mean, if somebody listening thinks, well, maybe I'm difficult, or and if people seem to be less connected to you than you expect them to be, if you feel like that like conversations stop when you walk into the room, that's pretty dramatic. Anyway, so if you think you might be difficult, the whole point, we were laughing before, I say, pay attention, just watch. And to do that, you have to really listen to what you say and watch your actions, and then listen. And it's fascinating what happens if you really listen to the other person, not to tell them that they're wrong or to complain about what they're saying, but you just really listen to what they're saying, and then ask them some questions about what they're saying. I had an experience with someone that I disagreed with politically, and I said yes, and I kind of argued with him, but he came back with his main statement really fiercely, and I said, well, that's an interesting outlook. He said, well, it's mine, and he went on. You know, we didn't argue, we didn't fight, because I just gave him a polite response after I asked him some questions, even though I disagreed with him. And I was patting myself on the back for not having an argument. One of the other things, what you were talking about, it's kind of hard in the beginning to really look at yourself. One of the things that I found useful, and I still find useful, is when I'm really, really angry at someone, or I feel so strongly about something that I get tongue-tied, you know. And I was thinking of some examples of when I was really, really difficult. When I graduated from college, and I found myself standing at a family gathering, and they were all these what you'd call your old white men who were running the businesses, right? And they were all patting themselves on the back for Vietnam, and I went off on them because it was 1967, and man, I was telling you, the Vietnam War was bad. And I think about that now, and I just think they were so polite and so patient with me. And but when you get that way, you're sort of shaking with rage. I find writing it down really helps. Sometimes I'll put that person in front of me in my head, and I'll write down all the things I wish I could say to them, or a group of people, or whatever. I find that writing down all the negatives is a lot healthier than saying them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And usually what happens, at least for me, is that as I write, I began to see, it's as you said in the beginning of this call, it reminds me of someone I grew up with, or a teacher, or a sibling, or, someone that was mean to me, a bully that I had, in my life. Or I notice that I'm repeating myself, and I wonder if maybe it's something that I'm feeling about myself rather than another person.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating, the insights that you get when you write stuff down and just then look at it. I go back and kind of look at it and see if I'm angry about the same things all the time.
I think, there's a lot to be said about that. And sometimes we might be losing sight of what the goal of or purpose of the conversation is. Like if you're in the workplace and you're trying to get your coworkers to agree with you, or do something a different way, or tackle a new project, and you don't watch their reactions to what you say, or realize there's so many ways of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody has an idea that kind of branches off from yours, and you don't want to really listen to it, you lost the goal of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it goes off track from what we're trying to do here, and goes into the personal basis. And I always thought at work, when I worked, for different companies, when the conversation got off track and it became personal, it was going to go one way or the other. Everybody's going to laugh, or everybody's going to be mad. That as soon as things got personal, and I'm not saying you can't be friendly at work, but when things got personal, people's feelings overshadowed the goal of what you're trying to accomplish in the first place. So I think, if you can keep the goal of the conversation in front of you more than your personal feelings, it might be better.
Definitely. I wanted to mention, I think that's very important. I just wanted to mention, just in case the listeners hadn't heard of a book called The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard. It's all about how to manage by getting smarter people than you to work for you. And then you spend a minute with each one in terms of managing. You don't have to spend lots of time giving them lots of direction because they're smarter than you are. Mm-hmm. But also he manages by walking around. So the interactions become ones of looking for the things that the person's doing well rather than what they're doing wrong.
I like this because it's leading by positivity, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, and I think there's things in business you have to watch, like, the budget, it's like, okay, who's having the martini lunches? That's not supposed to be there. But I think it's about, if you have a really strong team, you can say, hey, we have to, tighten our budget. There's some stuff going on in the world over here, or whatever's happening in the industry, because things change, just now we're not going to have avocados, and that's going to make me really sad.
I know, me too.
I know. I cannot live without my avocados. But, there's things like that. So things happen and changes. That's the thing. That change always happens. And if you have a good team and you're all on a team towards that purpose, like what Nancy says, that goal, then I think you can make changes without looking at who's having those martini lunches? You know, that positive side that you're talking about. I love the positive side, but not where your head is in the clouds. And I think sometimes that gets there's positive, but realism. How do you know what I mean? You have to have positive and realism together, not leading by, oh, we're going to do so well. Why are you going to do so well? You know what I mean?
How? Sure. Just because you're positive doesn't mean you're an airhead.
Exactly.
The first person that I worked for in a top-down kind of, not a school, it was a traditional corporation. Everybody in the company thought she was an airhead because she was always laughing and everything was always fun. And my first job interview I had with her, I didn't actually get the job, but I remember leaving thinking, darn, I'd like to work for her because she's so happy. I want to be happy like that. But I discovered later that people within the company thought she was an airhead because she was always happy. And of course she wasn't. She was very efficient. And she got lots of things done. And she got them because people cooperated with her all the time because she was fun to be with and interesting and positive. But it is tempting to write them off as airheads. I just had a quick thought when you were talking about budget, and I'm really annoyed. I cannot remember the name of the movie, but there's a movie where the president of the United States has a heart attack when he's having an affair, and they bring in a guy who looks exactly like him.
Oh yeah.
To be the president for a while.
Kevin Kline.
And there's yes. It's the name of the man, like Johnny Smith or something is the name of the movie. But his wife is also an actress that you'd recognize. His name I can't remember. But the point of it was he is told, Kevin Kline is told all the things he needs to do in order to be the president. And at one point he goes to a daycare center and discovers that the new budget that they just passed isn't going to cover the daycare center. And he says to the men that who have put him there, you know, his chief of staff and somebody else like that, well, why not? We should have money in the budget for that. And the guy says, if you can get $62 million, find $62 million in the budget, you can have your daycare centers or whatever. And so he calls up a friend who does his budgets at the job that he normally works for when he's not pretending to be the president. And the guy's an economist. And they sit down and they spend a weekend going through the budget. And then this pretend president that nobody knows is pretend actually has a big meeting with all his cabinet members, and he starts going over the budget and inviting them to drop this or take out that. And of course the chief of staff says, well, Mr. President, this wasn't on the agenda today. And he says, well, it is now. I've changed it. And of course the chief of staff can't do anything because they're in a big meeting with all these cabinet people who don't know that the president's a fake. And it's wonderful. It's a great scene. And he gets the daycare centers.
See?
That's what I thought when you were talking about budget. That's what I was thinking about.
And the movie, I just looked it up, is Dave. And it is Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver, that's who it is.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, she's awesome. We like her.
She's wonderful. She realizes that he's a fake pretty quickly because he looks at her legs when they're in a car together. And you know, her husband never looked at her legs anymore. But she also began to really, I don't know if the word is like him or appreciate him when he gets the money for the daycare centers, because that's something she cares about.
See, I think there's ways to do things and to negotiate in a positive way and not yell at each other. You know, I suppose sometimes things can get heated, but it's interesting if you look at the article, you know, even this conversation, and you look at what's going on in the world. You know, people are feeling pretty down. Some people are feeling really up. Some are feeling really down. And I think going back to, you know, looking at how we're handling things, what are we putting out there? How are we, you know, presenting ourselves? How are we speaking with others? Are we speaking to or with? You know, that kind of thing. And start taking control that way. At least you're doing something positive to take control in the world of control, is to start controlling yourself. That's the one thing you can do. You know, if everybody just took control of their own immediate life and surroundings and kept that on a positive note and made it as best as you could, the world really would be a better place. I mean, if everyone planted a garden, we wouldn't have dead zones in cities. So I'm just saying it's the same concept.
All the big thinkers, the ones that if you look on the internet, you see all these quotes by people like Indira Gandhi and not Indira Gandhi, Mother Teresa is what I was thinking of, but others, Lao Tzu, all these people. If you synthesize down what they say about changing the world, they all say in order to change the world, we have to change ourselves. If you want peace outside yourself, you have to be at peace inside yourself. And I think those of us who get rattled up and roiled up for peace out in the world is because we get so unpeaceful in ourselves with what we see happening in the world that we're not terribly useful because we're no longer at peace with ourselves. We have to come to some understanding. Like for me, I have finally gotten to the point where I understand that men who are sexist or who are disrespectful to women really are doing it out of habit and ignorance. Because if I believe they're doing it out of spite, I get all upset inside. But if I look at it and say, these poor guys, they really don't understand. They're either of a generation that doesn't understand, or they just don't get it. Someone hasn't explained it clearly to them. When I do that, I'm much more at peace with myself.
Well, it depends if they're a rapist. I mean, the rapist is a rapist.
Well, that's different. Not technically.
Yeah, I just had to throw that out there just because before we get the emails. Because again, people get there's the different levels of things, and that's exactly what you're saying, and it's very right. Whereas if someone, made a comment to a woman about her butt, exactly, that is not a rapist. So I just want to say that everybody's gone in treating those people as though they're rapists, and that's why I threw that out there.
No, but they just need help. They need to be taught.
Exactly.
I mean, a rape is about power. It doesn't really have anything to do with sex.
Well, all of it has to do with control and power in some way, right? And it does. And so I think you're right about that. And I also think when we're, if you're upset about things in the world, whatever it is, pick a topic. I'm for me, it's what's going on with I could go on. I'm not even going to start.
Never mind.
but I found Joan Baez says the antidote to despair is action, or action is the antidote to despair. One of my favorite quotes, because if you're upset about something or you're stuck in fear, either one, because basically it's still the same thing. The first thing to do is to take a step towards something. It's like, if we're starting a big project and we're all excited. I know Nancy and I are like that. Then all of a sudden you sit down and start and you're like, uh-oh. You have that moment of like, what did we just say we're going to do?
Yeah.
And then you go like, okay, start. And then you're like, okay, start. And then you're like, okay, start. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I can't do it all at once. And I'm like, no, just
do it a bit at a time.
Just start. It's the same thing as writing a book, right, Sarah? Just start.
Yeah, you just have to
start
one
writing.
step at a time.
Yeah.
I think I'm definitely not advocating inaction, but I'm advocating that taking action, as Joan would say, to take action with passion, but with calm. I mean, she's always calm.
Yeah. No, don't burn someone's house down or whatever. If you're mad at someone, your action should be, okay, wait, let's look up the laws about something, or sign a petition, or you want to raise money because, somebody took the money out of the budget for the school, go start a fundraiser, turn it around,
if you listen to the other person, then you have a one up on the person who doesn't listen, because you have more knowledge,
including on themselves.
Yeah, you have more knowledge about whatever you're talking about, and about the person who's speaking. You have more knowledge. So the person who interrupts and wants everything their own way, they are lacking knowledge, because they're just coming out with one idea that came from themselves, and they're stuck on it. So that's like watching the same TV program over and over. So, well, it is, what you think. So if you take the time and listen to other people and get opinions, then when you go back to the drawing table, you have so much more knowledge about what you're trying to do that it becomes easier.
Wow. There you have it.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, yes, but thinking of, and I'll probably talk myself out of it, but I'm just thinking I did work for people who said they were listening, but they came into the meeting knowing how they were going to allocate the funds or the work. And even though they listened to logical arguments and evidence that it could be done a different way, they were not prepared to do it differently. And so that sort of thing just annoyed the heck out of me.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, it's funny, this world of tweeting, which I personally detest because there are so many misunderstandings because of it. I mean, say whatever you have to say in 10 words or less and make sure you're totally understood. The concept is crazy to me, but, if, there's people who pretend to listen, but if you are looking at the person and you really are looking at the person and listening to the person, body language tells you a lot. It is more difficult, like over the phone or something like that, but tweeting, I mean, the whole thing is crazy. If you're really trying to get your point across and be totally understood the way you mean things, I don't know. I think the world of this, so many characters tweeting, being really short about things. And I'm talking about when you're talking about things important. I'm not talking about tweeting, hey, I'm outside waiting for you to come out of the house and, let's go. That's different. I'm not talking about short, easy messages. I'm talking about tweeting back and forth like you're trying to have a real conversation. You don't have the person in front of you. You don't see the body language, and everybody's talking in shorthand. So I think that,
except for people have gone into video now doing that. So in some ways, I think that's why video has taken over on social media.
But they're finding that
together.
They're finding that people still need to have face-to-face meetings. There was some research that was reported on that last week that, businesses are discovering that even though you can Skype and you can FaceTime and, there's ways of being separate physically, but also communicate visually and orally using technology, there comes a point where the team does not move as well as it does if they get together at least once or twice a year,
that's because of energy. That's the energy, because there's energy fields on everybody has energy fields. And so when you go to like those meetings, those raw sales meetings.
Wow. I'm not talking about that kind of a meeting.
No, but the raw thing doesn't work as well over Skype and all of that. The raw meeting works in a room because of the level of energy. And so I don't care how much you do rah to a computer screen to people that can see you. That energy is not going. That's you just don't have the same energy. So it
doesn't work even when I'm in the same room. I find
no, I know, but everybody's different on that.
Let's get them.
I know we should do a
whole show.
Don't
put me in a rah meeting. I just doesn't
I
work.
know, but it doesn't work. But there is a connectivity because there's all these other senses we have. And I agree with Nancy on the social media and the tweet, but there's a lot of, on the flip side, a lot of people are connecting that never would have. So there's a lot of, it's just kind of this weird thing. And I think right now, the way the world is connected, that it's going to change. It is balancing out. People are reading actual books. People are, there's this balance of vinyls coming back. So we don't have to have, we can actually put the turntable on. People are starting to be nostalgic for these quality of life things where we spend time doing something. So I think it's coming back. And I think that that's another thing about what's so good about your article and this conversation is everybody's moving so fast that I think that we're being difficult people just out of that and making snap judgments and you start off the article talking about road rage. That's you're being, it's like, okay, someone's having a bad day, but half of the time that's not what we say if someone cuts in front of you or does something stupid,
It's usually my second thought, yes.
Right, or third or fourth.
My first thought is, well, blah, blah, blah. And then I think, gee, I hope you get to where you need to be on time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and without killing anybody. Thank you very much.
Instead of, well, I'm going to teach you a lesson.
But
exactly.
Where travel, people are getting back out hiking. They're getting back out and doing road trips. And whether or not it's the economy that has to do with it, I think people are wanting to get back out into doing things. And I think social media in a really odd way does play a role in it, because as much as it sucks people into the vortex of technology and screens, they need to have something to post. So therefore, they actually have to go out and do something. So.
I like that part of it. I get that part. I just think if it's a really important thing,
you need to meet.
I really do. I'll be really honest with you. I have a problem with our heads of states tweeting things. I think that the president of the United States should not tweet.
Well, that's
policy and things all the time. I think that some important things need more explanation than a tweet.
Well, that's, a lot of politicians, even President Obama, used Twitter and social media to get to the masses. So it's a
two-edged sword.
Yeah. So it's everyone has kind of gone into that mode. So I don't know. It's an interesting world. So let's not get into politics.
There's something to be said for developing a policy. I don't think our president has, that mindset. He has, this is the way it ought to be. He changes it. But when you've got scholars and experts about a country, and you sit down with them and develop a policy, that takes more than a tweet. That takes a long time. And so that's what we're used to. That's what our leaders have done up until now. And so we now have a president who's just not willing to read or spend time listening very long to other people's ideas about a policy that he already has an opinion on.
Well, I think there's always change when a new leader comes in, right? And it's not a new party, but it's it's a different party that has been there for 8 years.
It is a new party. I mean, it's the party of Trump. It's not a Republican party anymore.
Yeah.
And we're now straying off here.
I know, that's what I'm saying. No more political stuff, because everybody has the person that they want, and not in power, but everybody has their own belief on that. And I think that at the end of the day, we're not there. We're not behind closed doors, but
speaking more to the idea of a real conversation and make sure that you are really properly understood.
Take your foot out of the mud.
And, it takes time, and it does take like a two-way street. If there's two people, it's a two-way street. If there's three people, it's a three-way street, and it takes time to be understood, and you have to think about the words you use and how you use them.
Exactly. Exactly.
And be prepared to do a lot of listening.
The three big things: pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. As Sarah's article says, again, everyone, Sarah's article is up on blendradioandtv.com. Just go there, type in Sarah Elliston. You'll see her other articles as well. And you'll also find her in the expert department. And don't forget, get her book. I mean, she's got this awesome article, but even better, get her book, because you've got examples in there, and you can write things, take notes, and actually really get into the nitty-gritty of everything. So go to sarah-elliston.com. Of course, Amazon and all that, but go to her website, because she's got a great blog as well. Go to sarah-elliston.com, and the book again is Lessons from a Difficult Person: How to Deal with People Like Us. And again, the article will be in the July-August summer issue of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. I want to thank all of you for joining us and for listening and for reading, because we know you're going to go read, right? Going back to the beginning, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Big Blend Radio airs Monday through Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and Fridays and Sundays at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And the schedule's up on bigblendradio.com, and you can listen as shows go live, or you can click through and listen with whatever outlet you want, whether it's iTunes or TuneIn or Stitcher. It's all there to listen on demand. And we got music for you, Sarah. Are you ready?
Ready. I'm ready.
I know.
Cool.
This one is called Difficult Man. It's from our good friends, the Joiners. We love them. They're based out of Birmingham, Alabama now. We first, connected with them about 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago when they were out in Nashville. And now they have 3 kids. I mean, It's amazing how life just changes.
Yeah.
But this is off of their second album called Glorious, Glorious. So if you go to bandcamp.com, you'll be able to find the Joiners and all 3 of their albums. But here it is, Difficult Man. Thanks so much, Sarah.
You're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
And take care. And here it is.
Take care.
Enjoy your difficult man.
We met when we were young and wet behind the ears. Now we're old and I understand what I put you through for all those years. So I'll raise a toast to you, 'cause I understand what you meant those 1,000 times you said I could be a difficult man. I can be a difficult man. I can be a difficult, I can be a difficult man. Wedding day jitters and I drank too much. Got drunk and went to jail. I got to the church on time, looking sick and feeling pale. Preacher asked, do you take this man to have and to hold? You think you can take all this from now till you get old? I can be difficult man. I can be difficult, I can be a difficult man. I'll raise a toast